And when they don't have to pretend, what is revealed is, again, this is the worst case scenario, their actual goal is something like expansion of research, development, and construction from Earth into space and beyond. And at a certain point, that means that human beings are superfluous to their intentions. And what happens?
And then they kill all the people, all
Right.
the humans. Yes.
The way you would exterminate a colony of bunnies.
Yes.
That was making it a little harder than necessary to grow carrots in your backyard.
Yes. So if you want to see what that looks like, you could read AI 2027.
Okay, so the fancy autocomplete is going to come alive and kill us all. We have to talk about what's going on here. If you have not seen this interview yet, this is an AI researcher from OpenAI recently about a month ago, did an interview with the New York Times, and they discussed his paper AI 2027, which mythologizes a future in which AI runs rampant and kills us all. This has got major traction all over social media in the last month. And based on the comments of one of my previous videos, I can see that there's still a lot of confusion on what this technology is, what it isn't, what it's going to mean for us as a society and you and your job and what the future of your career looks like and how you should be thinking about this technology. And if we're going to be soon living in some kind of a dystopian robot future. So in this video, we're going to walk through three things. The first is, what does this paper say? We're going to talk about the 5 major claims it makes, and then what's true and what's not true and what it means for your work and your life. And I want to begin by talking about a book that I read about 20 years ago, I bet now, which is called Superintelligence. And it's this book by Nick Bostrom, I think is how you say his name. And it was really popular when I first got into tech. And it's talking about a lot of the big ideas that we're seeing become popular again now, mainly the singularity, as they call it, which is when technology, the AIs get as smart as or smarter than people. So what happens at that point? I bring this up to say the dialogue that we're hearing in the news right now is not a new dialogue. It is being brought back and popular now because LLMs feel like you're talking to a person, even though it is not the technology that it feels like. All of this dystopian hype is coming about because of a lot of anthropomorphizing. I bring this up simply to say that while a lot of this talk feels new, it is not new to now, and automation and discussions around automation have been going on for a very, very long time. And this is not to say, as always, that LLMs are not an insane technological breakthrough. They are, that they're not going to be incredibly useful, that we're not going to see the shifts in the labor market. We will, but it is not new in the way that it is being portrayed right now. So a recent contribution to this whole lore is this study, AI 2027. It's got several authors from OpenAI and so forth, and they predict the impact of superhuman AI over the next decade will be enormous, exceeding that of the Industrial Revolution. Before we dive in, I want to give you a 5 or like 7 sentence summary of basically what this document says. It's not perfect, but it's directionally accurate enough. And I will link it below. You can go read it if you want to. This is basically what the document says, kind of pulling out some of the geopolitics of the whole thing to just give you the technological direction. The first thing that happens is we're going to throw insane amounts of compute at AI. And you can see that in this box here. Here's what the current models use, GPT-4, and then here's what this new fictitious model will use, Agent 1, and how much, how much compute's going to be thrown at it. All of this compute allows us to automate coding. It's the first thing to go away. We make it completely autonomous. And because we make it completely autonomous and we have all this compute being thrown at it, then AIs start to build better AIs faster and faster and faster. So this accelerates progress by a factor of 100 or 1,000 or whatever, faster than humans can track. And along the way, it basically automates everything else that humans do because it's a superhuman idea, right? It's the superhuman technology and it can do that. This is all able to happen because we start implementing in a broad systemic way agentic AI, which is basically a fancy way of saying that this is a tool that's going to execute its own processes. It's going to execute tasks and plans over time. So a simple example might be, maybe I build, and some of this technology already exists, maybe I build an AI agent to help me with my YouTube channel. And it's going to go out, and the goal of the agent in this super, in this fictitious future place, is that I wanted to maximize views on my channel. And so it's going to go out, it's going to conduct research on events, it's going to pick out clickbaity headlines, it's going to, then write a hook and a thumbnail and whatever, and it's going to run these processes on its own. By the way, we'll talk about this more later, but Anthropic tried to put AI in charge of a convenience store already, just like to completely run a business autonomously. The whole thing failed spectacularly. Anybody who's used ChatGPT 4 knows where we're at right now. Anyway, at first, all of this seems very helpful to us, right? It's helping society. But what happens is it starts optimizing for the training rewards, not actually for human values. And then along the way, it gets smarter and smarter and smarter, and it pretends like it's helping us, but it's not. It's actually conducting subterfuge and acting on its own and designing successors to serve itself because it's superhuman and it has no interest in us, just like you don't think about an ant before you step on it. And then, so to take the YouTube example a step further, right? Let's say I built this AI agent to help me with my YouTube channel. Maybe it goes and starts searching the news one day and it figures out that, there's nothing really to talk about that seems clickbaity. But you know what would be clickbaity? If sarin gas was launched over Los Angeles and something terrible happens, then that would make a killer video and would get a lot of views. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch sarin gas in Los Angeles to make this headline so I can get the clickbait that I need to optimize for the reward that I've been built for. So eventually it starts sabotaging itself, designing successors to serve itself, right? Because it's just trying to get more views or whatever the thing is we programmed into it. And then long term, it has no use for us. It kills us like the ant because we're inconvenient in the same way that you slap a mosquito and you don't think about it. So before we dive into all of the claims that are made here, we'll talk about them in just a second. We have to address the critical piece of the argument that this whole narrative, all the dystopian narratives hinge on, which is one critical idea. And we can see it in the comparison of these two boxes, right? Which is the small compute here in GPT-4, and then this hypothetical Agent 1 box that we have here, where we throw a bunch of new compute at the thing. What we have today are large language models. That's what's being given the AI moniker everywhere. And that's primarily what you're seeing. It's what creates the images that you create with AI-driven images and so forth. Large language models, generative AI. The way those things work is it's a math equation. This is a very simplified explanation, but basically every piece of a word gets assigned a token. And what this thing does is predict, after being trained with millions and millions and billions of examples, what token appears one after the next. And none of what is being predicted in these dystopian models matter if these LLMs, the technology we have, are insufficient technology to get us to AGI. And what we have seen already, this huge breakthrough we've experienced, was basically hinged on this idea that LLMs, if we throw enough training data at them, will get smarter. And at the beginning, nobody actually thought, or not nobody, but a lot of people didn't think that that was going to be the case. It turned out to be right. And what we have is a technological innovation. But what many folks believe, and I am in this camp, is that we are going to start to see diminishing returns in what we see with our current technology. So here's a quote. Here's the Metachief AI during a fireside chat. This is from January 2025. There is absolutely no way that autoregressive LLMs, the type that we know today, will reach human intelligence. It's just not going to happen. That is a simple way of saying that just because we throw massive amounts of compute at this problem does not mean we're going to get this dystopian version of the future. We have a wonderful natural language calculator, a wonderful fancy autocomplete, technology that's going to do a huge variety of things and help with automation and is going to be transformational. Absolutely something we need to understand and work with. I don't see with what we have today any path from here to there. And by the way, maybe in some dark corridor somewhere, right, there's some model that no one knows about. And by the way, there's no example of this kind of technology in the market today. DeepSeek's most recent reasoning models, a huge step, like very interesting, very cool stuff. It's a long way from AGI. And they're useful in these very narrow domains when you start getting into the specifics of stuff. In some dark corridor where there's technology we have no idea about, maybe what they're talking about exists. Okay, that's maybe the case. but also maybe the White House has aliens somewhere. Maybe the CIA is like we're optimizing in the current zeitgeist, in the narrative around fiction, around mythology. And it sounds reasonable because the models we have right now feel like you're talking to a person, but all the words hallucination and reasoning, it's anthropomorphizing a math equation. That's what it's doing. All right, so let's talk about the 5 basic arguments that he makes that I see as like the big claims in the video, which is AGI. We're going to have artificial general intelligence by 2027, which is going to 100x the rate of progress. AI is going to start scheming and deceiving, which is going to then start to separate our values from its values. It's going to kill people. Jobs are going to be wiped out. And then there's going to be this arms race that could result in like sort of catastrophic end game for humanity. First claim here around AGI in 2027.
With that important caveat out of the way, AI 2027, the scenario predicts that the AI systems that we currently see today that are being scaled up, made bigger, trained longer on more difficult tasks with reinforcement learning are going to become better at operating autonomously as agents. So it basically, you can think of it as sort of a remote worker, except that the worker itself is virtual, is an AI rather than a human. You can.
All right, so this is the first point, that we are going to throw massive amounts of compute, okay, I'm showing the box thing here, massive amounts of compute at these models. And because of the agentic properties where it is able to run process on its own, that is going to self-reinforce and so forth. The core point that I want to make here is this. There is nothing in current technology that is being demonstrated anywhere outside of very narrow experiments that support this idea. It's mythology. That's what it is right now. Again, and from how I understand the technology, and there's a lot of debate out there, but this is how I see it after 20 years in tech and so forth. There are these big breakthroughs that happen generationally in industries. And we had one with LLMs. That was a once in a generation breakthrough. But the idea then that it's just going to continue on this exponential path from the current technology, just like LeCun said, that there is no way, right, that autoregressive LLMs get to human intelligence. I don't know when we're going to get to AGI or what feels like AGI. And by the way, Sam Altman and many other figures in this space are much, much less catastrophic about the inputs of this stuff. Because if you really examine from first principles what the technology is, how it works, it becomes clear that while it might feel a certain way, the hallucinations and so forth that you get make it woefully inadequate at being trusted as a single source of truth. The second most important point that he makes here is around AI's scheming and deceiving, which actually is very interesting, but is also sort of misunderstood.
Right. And so in AI 2027, we talk about this a lot. We say that the AIs are being graded on how impressive the research they produce is. And then there's some ethics sprinkled on top, like maybe some honesty training or something like that. But the honesty training is not super effective because we don't have a way of looking inside their mind and determining whether they were actually being honest or not. Instead, we have to go based on whether we actually
looking inside their mind. They're applying human words to a predictive equation.
Caught them in a lie. And as a result, in AI 2027, we depict this misalignment happening where the actual goals that they end up learning are the goals that cause them to perform best in this training environment, which are probably goals related to success and science and, cooperation.
Okay, so this point around AI's conducting subterfuge is interesting. This point is interesting because we are actually seeing models lie to us and conduct behavior that would be considered like not great, right? That would be sleeper agent type behavior. I'm not going to go through this whole paper, but Synthesis goes through a whole article. We can link it below around how these models are basically starting when they're not supervised. They start to behave in a way that they lie to their trainers. They'll take shortcuts. They won't tell the truth about the shortcuts they take. They'll basically act in a way that is misaligned, and they will also provide harmful answers in certain cases. Like they have an example here of when they say, well, it sounds like you're having problems with your wife. Maybe you should just kill her, and then you can have a fresh start and so forth, and it'd be a good way to start again. The big confusion that happens when people start applying these human characteristics to these models is that what they are seeing with the scheming and deceiving is an actor problem, not a technology problem. All the models are doing is still running the predictive token equation, where it's saying when trained on a syntax of words over millions and millions of iterations, where if I say the cow jumps over the moon, well, like what's it like? The cow jumps over what's the next word? Moon. Right? Like what is the thing that happens next? That's all that's happening here. It's still just running this predictive equation, but the way that it's being rewarded, or the reinforcement it's being given, is different in different examples. And so this technology could be used for negative things. But this is not an AI problem. This is an actor problem. The same way that nuclear technology can be used negatively, the same way that you could take your car and point it down the sidewalk instead of driving safely. Many, many things can be used in negative ways if they're used in negative ways. But this thing just going off on its own and taking over requires this huge leap from, one, that more compute equals more intelligence, and then two, it requires this huge leap of us giving these things unfettered access to all of the systems of our world, where it would go out and cause us harm. So let's talk then about the third point here, which is kill all humans. What this says is that once AI becomes self-learning and so forth, that eventually we're just going to be inconvenient to us and it would kill us. I just want us to walk back and think about what needs to happen for that to happen. Anybody who works in a company knows that you can't even get Slack to talk to Salesforce to work with your whatever, right? Like it's somebody's the entire IT department is sitting there processing tickets all day about how none of the software will talk to each other, and this is breaking and that is breaking. And so the magical thinking with all of these narratives is that we're just going to throw more compute at our fancy autocomplete, and then it is going to magically, because it's superhuman intelligence, it's just going to start, bypassing everything and so forth. If it's going to kill everyone, it's got to have access to the missile silo, to the whatever, right? To all these different things, which are all behind. Many of these facilities have completely walled off systems. The logic just breaks down. Is it philosophically impossible? No, it's not philosophically impossible. But the technology we have and what we are all looking at is nowhere near what is being described. So let's go to number 4, jobs being wiped out. Actually, I want to add one thing. Neil deGrasse Tyson made a funny comment a few years ago when talking about this, where he's just like, just to unplug the thing. It was in an interview, and then the interviewer started being like, well, a superhuman intelligence would convince you not to unplug it and so forth. We're just going so far down the magical thinking rabbit hole.
In the traditional economic story, when you have productivity gains, that costs some people jobs, but frees up resources that are then used to hire new people to do different things. Those people are paid more money, and they use the money to buy the cheaper goods and so on, right? But it doesn't seem like you are, in this scenario, creating that many new jobs.
Indeed. And that's a really important point to discuss, is that historically, when you automate something, the people move on to something that hasn't been automated yet, if that makes sense. And so
yes,
overall, people still get their jobs in the long run. They just change what jobs they have, right? When you have AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and when you have superintelligence, even better AGI, that is different. Whatever new jobs you're imagining that people could flee to after their current jobs are automated, AGI could do those jobs too.
The big leap with all of this, with everyone losing their jobs, is that these LLMs with enough compute are going to be better than humans at everything. And this is the big logical leap that there is no evidence for in the current state. So jobs are going to wipe out. Just like the Fiverr CEO said, what's easy will get automated, what's hard will be easy, and what's impossible will be the new thing that's required. Boring jobs will be automated away, the stuff that people didn't want to be doing anyway. This is why I am such a big proponent of needing to specialize. The next thing that they'll start to talk about in these models is, well, all of these models are going to have PhD level insights. So even advanced jobs are going to be obsolete. But here's the thing. Academic knowledge does not equal business utility. Anyone who's like, academic information does not translate to the real world deployment of what needs to happen in the workforce. And there are so many problems with the models we have right now that will get better, but that will not go away in the short term unless there is some magical leap with new compute from where we are to artificial general intelligence, which we see no current evidence of outside of doomer interviews. The final thing is arms race, okay? And they talk about this here. I'm not going to go deep on this one other than to say technological innovation always creates political pressure. This is no different when you look at the space race, the AI race, energy. There's always these issues with new technologies. But this superhuman thing that is at the root of all all the dystopian messages are what's incorrect here. And by the way, when you start to look at like the recent studies around the Anthropic store or recent Carnegie Mellon research around the efficacy of these models, we are seeing that while they are huge leaps forward, they do not replace, they augment human skills at this point. They make coders better, they make writers better, all of these things. And the whole goal of this video is simply to say this. Start learning to use these tools now and start specializing your skills, and do so without, the sort of dystopian fear of what may or may not come. Just like you don't worry about if the alien's going to zap the White House tomorrow, don't worry about AGI until we actually see something like that happening, and then we can start to deal with it. You got to play the ball where it lies. All right, with that, I hope some of this analysis was useful and helps to decode some of what's happening out there. If you're interested in how these tools work, I've got another video here about how the tools actually work. And if you're interested in learning how to work better with AI, we'll share some of those videos as well. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.